It was a cold winter afternoon in a small Canadian town, the kind where snowflakes clung stubbornly to the window panes and the air outside bit at your skin. Inside a modest little house, Emma sat on the couch with her hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea, her breath visible in the air. The old heater in the corner rattled like it was on its last breath, and the light above the kitchen table flickered in uneven bursts. She had called a local electrician, not because she could afford it, but because the wiring had gotten so bad that it scared her. The truth was, she hadn't had a proper meal in days, and her fridge stood mostly empty, a silent reminder of how hard things had become. But she didn't tell him that. She didn't tell anyone that. When the knock came at the door, she pulled her cardigan tighter and opened it to find a tall man with snow still dusting his coat. His name was Mark, and he smiled in that warm, easy way that made you feel like you'd met him before. "Heard you've got some wiring trouble," he said, stepping inside with his toolbox. Emma nodded and pointed him toward the flickering lights. She stayed out of his way, embarrassed by the state of her home. But while she sat quietly in the living room, she noticed him moving into the kitchen, opening the fridge door. She felt her stomach twist. Why was he looking in there? Mark didn't say anything at first. He just closed the fridge slowly and came back into the room. "You called me to fix the wiring," he said gently. "But I think there's something else here that needs fixing first." She blinked, confused, until he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded list. "There's a grocery store just around the corner. I'm going to get you some food. We can worry about the wiring after that." Emma's face flushed with a mix of shock and embarrassment. "No, you don't have to. She started, but her voice cracked. He held up a hand, shaking his head. "Emma, I can fix wires anytime. But no one should have to sit through a winter without enough to eat. Give me 20 minutes. And before she could protest again, he was out the door. True to his word, Mark returned with bags of groceries: bread, milk, fresh vegetables, a carton of eggs, even a small chocolate bar tucked in on top. As he unpacked the food onto her counter, Emma stood there, her eyes wet. She had been trying so hard to hold herself together, to get through each day without asking for help. And here was a stranger doing for her what she hadn't dared to hope anyone would. They sat for a while after, sipping tea as the snow fell heavier outside. Mark finally got to work on the wiring, tightening screws, replacing worn cables, bringing steady light back into the home. But in Emma's mind, the most important thing he had fixed wasn't the flickering bulb. It was the quiet ache of being unseen, the fear of going through hardship alone. When he was finished, she thanked him in a trembling voice. He just smiled and said, "One day, when you can, pass it on to someone else. That's how we keep each other warm." That night, Emma cooked herself a proper meal for the first time in weeks. And though the winter wind still howled outside, her little house felt warmer than it had in a very long time. Sometimes the kindest repairs aren't made with tools, but with compassion. And in a town blanketed in snow, one small act of kindness had lit up more than just a room. It had lit up a heart.